Stop trying to fix people who don't want to change. Harsh, may be true, absolutely. Some of you are pouring your energy into people who would rather complain than improve, who want comfort more than growth, and you're losing yourself in the process. You think it's love, loyalty, or kindness, but it's self-destruction dressed as helping. Today, we're ripping the bandage off. You can pour your time, heart, and energy into someone, but if they don't want change for themselves, nothing you do will ever be enough. You can coach them, motivate them, educate them, and show them what's possible. But if their identity is rooted in staying the same, they will reject every opportunity to grow. We romanticize the idea of seeing potential because it makes us feel wise, loyal, and supportive, but potential is not the same as action. Potential without personal willingness becomes a burden placed on the shoulders of whoever recognizes it. You're not a savior, and people don't transform because you believe in them. They transform because they decide to believe in themselves. When you try to drag someone into a better version of their life, you often end up stuck in the same place with them. Growth only works when it comes from the inside out, never the outside in. At some point, you must accept that desire is not transferable, motivation is not contagious to the unwilling, and you cannot want change on behalf of someone more than they want it for themselves. And we're conditioned to believe helping people change is noble, but there's a hidden ego inside it that no one talks about. Helping becomes a way to feel significant, needed, or morally superior, especially if you grew up being the fixer in your family or social circle. You start tying your identity to being the person who elevates everyone else, and when they don't change, you internalize it as your failure. But it's not your failure, it's misalignment. Growth is not an obligation, it's a personal contract. You cannot rewrite someone's contract with life just because you think they'd be happier or more successful if they honored it. Some people don't grow because growth would require them to face uncomfortable truths, take accountability, or let go of the habits, excuses, and stories that protect their ego. And if they're not ready to face themselves, no level of advice, encouragement, or opportunity will matter. Your role is not to carry people forward, but to walk your path so clearly that those ready to evolve choose to follow by example. And the harsh reality is that trying to change someone who doesn't want change doesn't elevate them. It drains you. You start dimming your own potential because you're busy babysitting theirs. You water a seed that refuses to sprout, thinking more attention, more patience, or more sacrifice will finally make it grow. But people don't change because you invest more. They change because they reach a threshold where staying the same becomes more painful than transforming. When you hold someone's hand through every consequence, cushion every fall, and solve every setback for them, you're robbing them of the very discomfort required for growth. Pain is often the catalyst for transformation, and when you remove it, you unintentionally delay their evolution. Meanwhile, you burn out. You lose clarity, you lose momentum in your own life because you're functioning as someone else's engine. If you are constantly the fuel in a relationship, friendship, or partnership, it's only a matter of time before you run out of energy to power your own journey. And you cannot drag people to the next level and expect them to stay there if they never learned how to walk there themselves. Forced growth doesn't stick because it wasn't chosen. It was borrowed, imitated, or done for approval. When people change for someone else, they eventually revert back to who they were because there's no internal anchor holding the transformation in place. Real change is a decision followed by discipline, followed by identity shift. It requires someone to accept responsibility for their life, to admit that where they are is the result of their choices, and to create new patterns aligned with who they want to become. You can't do that work for them. If they haven't hit the point of emotional honesty with themselves, you're not helping, you're enabling. And the more you push, the more they resist because pressure triggers defensiveness, not evolution. People only learn when they're ready to learn, and readiness can't be gifted. It must be earned. And the most loving thing you can do for someone who refuses to grow is to stop interrupting the consequences of their choices. Consequences are life's teachers, and they are far more effective than lectures, advice, or motivation. When you stop acting as their life jacket, you give them the chance to understand what sinking feels like, and sometimes that's the exact wake-up call they need. But stepping back doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing yourself for someone who isn't willing to invest in themselves. It means valuing your energy enough to redirect it toward your own goals, your own expansion, and your own evolution. People don't rise because you pull harder. They rise because they decide to stand up. And when you release the responsibility of carrying someone else's growth, you free them to meet their own potential or to stay where they are, which is also their right. Some journeys aren't meant to be shared, and some lessons aren't yours to teach. There is a point where helping someone stops being support and starts becoming self-betrayal, yet most people don't realize when they cross that line. We convince ourselves that being available 24/7, being the emotional anchor, or constantly rescuing people from their own decisions is kindness, when often it's a form of self-abandonment. You start lowering your standards to keep the peace, accepting apologies instead of changed behavior, and calling it loyalty. But loyalty that requires you to shrink, suppress your needs, or tolerate repeated disrespect isn't loyalty, it's self-sacrifice disguised as virtue. You begin to normalize emotional labor that isn't reciprocated and call it being a good friend or a supportive partner, when really it's becoming a caretaker for someone unwilling to take responsibility for themselves. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, and when you overgive, they learn to underinvest. Helping becomes a cycle, not a solution, and the more you give, the more they expect. And over time, you lose the ability to differentiate between compassion and enabling, because you've made someone else's comfort more important than your own emotional well-being. And many people confuse supporting someone with saving them, and that's where the damage begins. Saving someone requires you to take ownership of outcomes that aren't yours, to fix problems you didn't create, and to fight battles that aren't your responsibility. You start feeling emotionally responsible for their growth, their mental state, and their life choices. The moment you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself, the dynamic has already become toxic. Support empowers people, but saving disables them because it teaches dependence, not resilience. When someone learns that you will always catch them, they stop learning how to stand on their own feet. You become their emotional crutch, their motivation, their problem solver, their safety net, instead of them building those muscles for themselves. And the truth is, the more you protect someone from the discomfort of change, the more you shield them from the lessons required to evolve. Saving someone isn't love, it is an investment in a version of them they haven't chosen to become. And there is a hidden emotional payoff behind overhelping that very few people are willing to admit, and this is where self-awareness becomes uncomfortable. Overgivers often derive identity from being needed, validated, or seen as the one who holds everything together. It makes you feel significant, irreplaceable, or morally superior. So you keep pouring in to keep that identity alive. If you're the fixer, the healer, the strong one, the one who never gives up on people, it gives you purpose even if it's destroying you. Your value becomes tied to your usefulness, not to your authenticity. And when your worth comes from being needed, you will subconsciously seek out people who are broken, lost, or emotionally unstable just so you can keep playing hero. You stay in imbalanced relationships because imbalance validates the role you believe you must play. But if the only way you feel valuable is by saving others, you will never attract people who can stand beside you, only people who stand beneath you. And the most painful part is that trying to help too much becomes a form of self-neglect. But because the intention feels noble, you don't see the self-harm. You start settling for relationships where your needs don't matter, your emotions are secondary, and your boundaries are optional because you're so busy caring for everyone else. You silence your voice to avoid conflict. You justify mistreatment by focusing on someone's potential. And you accept breadcrumbs of effort because they're trying. You become addicted to the fantasy of who someone could be if they finally listened, healed, or changed, and that fantasy becomes more real to you than the reality they continuously show you. But loving someone's potential while ignoring their patterns is the fastest way to betray yourself. You cannot build a healthy connection with someone by abandoning yourself for it. Compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. And the more you tolerate, the more you teach people that your capacity for suffering is limitless. And helping too much also creates emotional burnout, resentment, and internal bitterness that eventually poisons the relationship you were trying so hard to save. You begin to notice that you are always the one initiating conversations, repairing conflicts, apologizing first, and holding space for everyone else's emotions while yours remain unheard. You feel drained after interactions, not supported. You dread the emotional weight of their messages or calls because you know it will be another crisis, another complaint, another issue for you to solve. You begin to resent them for depending on you, yet you also resent yourself for allowing it. This resentment isn't because you gave too much. It's because you received too little in return. Relationships are supposed to be mutual exchanges, not emotional charity. When one person is always pouring and the other is always taking, the relationship becomes an emotional debt with no repayment plan. And the longer the imbalance persists, the more you lose yourself in the process. And we label sacrifice as love because many of us were raised to believe that love means suffering, enduring, or never giving up on people. But healthy love has boundaries, standards, and expectations. Love without accountability is not love, it's attachment. And attachment to someone who drains you isn't romantic or loyal, it's self-imprisonment. You don't prove love by tolerating mistreatment. You don't prove loyalty by staying silent about behavior that hurts you. You don't prove commitment by accepting excuses instead of change. If you constantly have to shrink to fit someone's comfort zone, then love is costing you your identity. And if love requires you to lose yourself, it's not love, it's bondage dressed as devotion. Look around at the people you spend time with because your environment is either fertilizing your growth or poisoning it without you even realizing. If you are the only one in your circle with ambition, discipline, or the desire to elevate your life, you will eventually start questioning yourself instead of questioning your environment. Human beings adapt to the standards around them, and if the standard is low, your potential shrinks to fit the room. When you are surrounded by people who settle, you slowly convince yourself that settling is normal, even wise. If you are always the one motivating, inspiring, or pushing others to dream bigger, you're in the wrong room because you can't grow while constantly dragging others. Growth requires friction, accountability, and exposure to people who challenge your thinking, not just applaud your efforts. You need peers who make you better, not projects who make you tired. And if you stay in the wrong environment long enough, you'll eventually forget that a better one exists. And the company you keep is one of the strongest predictors of your future because proximity shapes identity more than intention does. You can have the most powerful goals, but if everyone around you plays small, you'll feel guilt for wanting more. You start downplaying your wins so others don't feel insecure, and you start shrinking your dreams because no one around you understands them. Soon you're operating at half your capacity because you're afraid of outgrowing the people you care about. And this is where many people stunt their own evolution, not because they lack ability, but because they fear leaving people behind. But growth requires separation at times, and if the cost of belonging is self-abandonment, then the circle is too small for your future. You deserve to be around people who normalize ambition, who celebrate excellence, and who hold you to a higher standard because they want to see you win, not stay comfortable. And when you place yourself in environments where growth is the standard, everything about you rises to meet that expectation. You start thinking bigger because the conversations stimulate your mind instead of draining your energy. You start acting with more urgency because everyone around you is in motion, focused, and committed to becoming better. You begin to feel uncomfortable being average, not because anyone shames you, but because excellence becomes the norm. And the more you witness what is possible for others, the more you believe it is possible for you too. Environment is a mirror. It shows you what you could be if you stopped holding yourself back. Being around people who embody discipline, humility, consistency, and self-respect pushes you to build those qualities in yourself. And that kind of influence is more valuable than advice because you learn by proximity, not preaching. And there is a difference between a circle that supports you and a circle that stretches you. And most people never experience the latter because it requires leaving their comfort zone. A supportive circle is good, but a growth-driven circle is transformative because it doesn't let you stay where you are. These are the people who call you out when you're playing small, who don't tolerate your excuses, and who remind you of your standards when you forget them. Support without accountability creates stagnation, but support with accountability creates evolution. The right circle won't just clap for your achievements, they'll question your limits. They'll ask why you're not thinking bigger, why you're avoiding the uncomfortable work, and why you're letting fear dictate your choices. And while that may feel confronting, it is the catalyst for real change. Growth comes from being challenged, not coddled. And many people stay in environments that no longer align with who they want to become because they feel loyalty to their past, not responsibility to their future. They fear being judged, misunderstood, or labeled as arrogant for wanting more. So they remain in places that feel familiar, even if those places sabotage their progress. But you cannot evolve while trying to maintain the approval of people, committed to staying the same. The truth is, when you start growing, not everyone will clap. Some will feel threatened because your growth exposes their stagnation. And if you lower your speed to match theirs, you're not being kind, you're being complicit in your own limitation. You owe it to yourself to choose environments that match your hunger, not your history. Your future requires space, not permission. And one of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that outgrowing people is a natural part of growth, not a betrayal. You can love people deeply and still acknowledge that they are no longer aligned with the direction you're heading. Keeping people in your life just because you've known them a long time is emotional nostalgia, not wisdom. Longevity doesn't equal alignment. You don't have to cut people off with bitterness or drama, but you do need to reposition them so they don't limit your evolution. Some people belong in your heart, but not in your inner circle. The inner circle should be reserved for those who elevate your mindset, expand your vision, and challenge you to rise. You cannot take everyone with you to every level, and that's not cruelty, that's growth. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is a requirement for a fulfilled and mentally healthy life, yet most people feel guilt for choosing themselves. We are conditioned to believe that being a good person means constantly being available, endlessly understanding, and always forgiving. But when you protect someone else's comfort at the cost of your own peace, you're not being kind, you're abandoning yourself. You cannot live a high-quality life if you allow everyone to have access to your time, mind, and emotional bandwidth without boundaries. Your energy is currency, and if you spend it on people who waste it, you will never have enough left for people who value it. Not everyone deserves access to you, especially those who refuse to respect your limits or reciprocate your effort. Protecting your energy means being selective about who you allow in your mental, emotional, and physical space. It means learning to say no without explaining, no without guilt, and no without negotiation. Because your peace is not up for debate, and you cannot build a strong life on a foundation of emotional exhaustion. And allowing people to face the consequences of their choices is not cruelty. It is integrity, respect, and clarity. When someone doesn't want to change, the most loving thing you can do is step out of the way and let life deliver the lessons your words never could. Pain, consequences, and discomfort are some of life's most powerful teachers, and shielding someone from them only delays their growth. You cannot carry someone through life and expect them to learn how to walk. Strength is built through experience, not protection. The moment you start solving someone's problems more than they do, you begin to disable them. You're not helping them rise, you're making yourself the crutch they lean on. And a person who depends on you to avoid the outcomes of their choices will never develop accountability. Stepping back doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop interfering with the process that builds maturity. Sometimes the transformation you hope to inspire can only begin when you remove yourself from the role of protector. And there is a difference between supporting someone and sacrificing your well-being for them, and that difference lies in boundaries. Support empowers, sacrifice drains. Support encourages responsibility, sacrifice absorbs blame. Support creates strength, sacrifice breeds dependence. People who truly value you won't punish you for having boundaries. They will respect you more because of them. The ones who become angry, manipulative, or distant when you stop overgiving were never benefiting from your presence. They were benefiting from your lack of self-respect. Boundaries expose intentions. When you stop saying yes to everything, you quickly learn who was there for you and who was there for what you gave. Protecting your energy forces you to confront truths about people you may not want to see, but must acknowledge. And though it may feel uncomfortable, temporary discomfort is far better than long-term resentment. And letting go of people who drain you is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of self-awareness and emotional maturity. You can love people deeply and still choose distance because love without peace is chaos, and love without respect is pain. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay, and not every relationship is meant to evolve with you. Some people were only meant to teach you self-worth through the experience of losing yourself. The goal is not to become cold or detached, but to become wise about where you invest your heart. Release the belief that holding on is strength. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure is choosing yourself and not returning. You don't need permission to protect your energy, and you don't need validation to leave what harms you. Your life elevates the moment you stop forcing connections that drain your spirit. And you owe it to your future to stop prioritizing people who refuse to meet you with the same effort, honesty, or growth you offer. You were not placed on this earth to serve as emotional security for people who choose comfort over evolution. The right people will not require you to sacrifice your boundaries, your peace, or your identity to be loved. They will celebrate your growth, match your effort, and respect your energy because they value who you are, not just what you provide. Protecting your energy isn't about building walls. It's about building standards for who is allowed into your life. And when you stop pouring into the wrong people, you create space for the right ones, the ones who inspire you, support you, challenge you, and grow with you. The people who are meant to stay in your life will not need to be carried. They will walk beside you. Your energy is sacred. Treat it like it matters because it does.